and welcome. It's been a while since I've recorded a video, and to be honest, I'm recording this one on my cell phone using my front-facing camera and no external microphone, which is a brave choice in this day and age on YouTube, but you know, here we are. I'm really hoping that it works out actually, so that I can stick to this minimalist style of filming and not have to charge the camera, charge the microphone, and do the whole lot before I want to record, because sometimes you just want to sit and talk. If you're watching this video, it probably worked out kind of okay. Anyway, onto the video.
There are so many gay coming-of-age stories that explore these similar themes of first love and discovery, shame, secrets, and regret. Books in similar settings with a similar style of prose. This one, though, Lie With Me, something about it really sets it apart, and it has been a favourite of mine for years. The writing feels yearning and nostalgic, and it's a beautiful and devastating love story that took me a while to recover from when I first read it.
And I should mention that Molly Ringwald, as in the Molly Ringwald, wrote the English translation of this book. I'll be forever fascinated by her mastery of both the English and the French language in translating this. Now, I've read translated books before, but I think because I was so obsessed with every word choice and turn of phrase in this book, I just developed a different kind of appreciation for it. I really appreciated this adaptation because somehow, while the book isn't missing anything at all, the movie fills in some gaps in a way. So if you're unfamiliar with the plot, it tells the story of two boys who have a brief but life-altering adolescent relationship in the 80s. And we see one of them many years later as an adult, as he revisits his childhood hometown and he meets the now grown adult son of his first love. The movie director Oliver Payon also focuses quite a bit more on the emotional fallout from that relationship than the book. When I first watched the movie, I remember being quite taken aback by how angry and resentful Luca, the grown son of one of the protagonists, was. But I mean, this did make sense. I mean, he was the son of a closeted father who saw no other option but to fulfill his duty by leading a traditional heterosexual life. But as a result, he was deeply lonely and unhappy and kind of a ghost and barely emotionally present for his family. And this ultimately led to the estrangement from his son. I don't want to say that the book went easier on the present day characters, more that the movie was unflinching in its depiction of just how deeply damaging this was, particularly for Luca. This is apparent in the books, but more so in the movie. In the books, I was so caught up in the main characters, Stefan and Tomas, that it didn't demand that I spend too much time reflecting on Luca's struggle. This is a short story set in a rural town in France in 1984. Our protagonist is 17-year-old Stefan. He's quiet and a bit of a nerdy teen who knows that he's gay, and he has accepted this about himself. He's different from the other boys, and while people might suspect his sexuality, he doesn't try and change anything about himself or draw attention either way. He does have friends, and while he is quiet, he's not shy. He's fairly socially well-adjusted, and he's smart, and he has this, this quiet confidence of a boy brought up by intellectual or wealthier parents in a small town where a lot of the people around him are more conservative. Still, he is a slightly awkward and a quiet teen who doesn't take up too much space in a way. Tomas could not be more different. He exudes a youthful masculinity with the girl on the back of his motorbike and his cigarettes and being liked by his popular friend group. Despite this though, Tomas being popular and having friends, there's still a quietness about him, and this is what draws Stefan to him. In the book, Stefan observes, he also likes his solitude. It's obvious. He speaks little, smokes alone. He has this attitude, his back up against the wall, looking up towards the sun or down at his sneakers, this manner of not quite being in the world. I think I love him for his loneliness. That is what pushed me towards him. I love his aloofness, his disengagement with the outside world. Such singularity moves me. So we know right away that Stefan sees Tomas. He's observing him from a distance, but Tomas walks right past him without a single glance, not noticing him. So it's surprising later on when Tomas hands Stefan a note to meet with him in a secret location. Or I guess it's not really surprising because someone like Tomas would probably overcompensate by ignoring Stefan in public. He almost makes it a point of ignoring him in a way. The thing is, obviously, Tomas has also noticed Stefan watching him. He's also been observing. And remember what I said about Stefan's quiet confidence? Well, Tomas says something a little bit like that in his own way. He says, "Because you're not like all the others. Because I don't see anyone but you, and you don't even realize it." He adds this phrase which for me is unforgettable: "Because you will leave and we will stay." Tomas says that he can no longer be alone with this feeling, that it hurts too much. The loneliness of being attracted to another boy and having to hide it, or just the loneliness of being bisexual or gay in general. Their first sexual encounter is quick, it's unpleasant, and it's painful. It's consensual, for sure, but Tomas is impatient, he's rough, and he's emotionally detached. He leaves poor Stefan sitting there reeling after the fact. Still, they very quickly develop a secret physical relationship. Naturally, Stefan falls in love. Well, he kind of has been in love. And while Thomas still refuses to interact with Stefan in public, we do see him start to open up a little bit in their private moments. He doesn't bristle as much at intimate physical touch outside of sex, and he shares one of his favorite places that he thinks that Stefan will like. The boys swim, they laugh, they have fun together, and it's everything to see them so free and with each other in an outside place, even though it's still quite hidden. Stefan says that his bedroom became their kingdom. Now, Thomas's parents own a farm, which they work on, so I assume that they're almost always around somewhere on the homestead, whereas Stefan's parents actually go off to work. And so the boys do have a little bit of privacy at Stefan's home, which puts Thomas at ease. At first, he is a little apprehensive because this isn't his space, but soon it does, become their kingdom, and probably one of the few places that Thomas can explore this side of himself. The boys and their fragile young love are protected in this little bubble. Thomas reads some of Stefan's writing as well. Against Stefan's will at first because it's personal and embarrassing, but he watches how Thomas reacts to what is written. Judging by Thomas's emotional, surprised expression and Stefan's shy laugh, I guess it's implied that the writing is about them or about Thomas. These bedroom scenes are some of my favorites in the film because we get to see this other side of Thomas. He can be a goofy teen and he learns to accept, enjoy, and even return Stefan's tenderness towards him. After their time in the kingdom, Thomas even subtly, but very subtly, acknowledges and smiles at Stefan at school. He's not going to be coming out or anything like that, but I really love that his happiness and his feelings for Stefan couldn't completely be contained in a public space anymore.
Even more than that, this secret acknowledgement in a public space is important because, to me anyway, this is Thomas's way of letting Stefan know that even outside of their little kingdom, what he has with Stefan is meaningful to him. I don't want to overstate the intentions behind this secret smile, but for somebody like Thomas, this gesture does mean a lot, and you can see that Stefan is pleased by it.
And while he's still burdened by the secret of who he really is, he can finally share this part of himself with somebody, and so he is less lonely. At one point, Thomas even jokingly refuses to turn Stefan's declaration of love, but you can see it. You feel it and it's there. And the fact that he reacted in this joking way as opposed to being aggressive or being scared kind of shows how far that Thomas has come and how comfortable he is with Stefan as well. He lets his guard down and he trusts Stefan enough to let him take the lead during their intimate moments. Stefan shows Thomas a more gentler way to be, and the sex becomes more than just a physical act to satisfy an urge for Thomas. The boys are passionate, sensual, intimate, and exploring each other. Still, the natural course of things would be for them to just be together whenever they want, and Stefan would be able to do that, but as Thomas said, Stefan will leave and he'll be left behind. And imagine being out as a gay son of a farmer and being alone in the 80s in a small French town. We can't know it, but the stigma might have had him quite lonely and shunned. It's ironic because this is the life that Thomas ends up leading anyway. Lonely and almost as though he isolates himself. He didn't need society to do that for him. While Stefan is the dreamer between them, even he knows deep down that Thomas is the only son of a farmer and he has to keep the farm going. There is no other future for him. It can never be more than this for them. In the book, Stefan says, "All the same, there is often a staggering intimacy between us, a closeness beyond imagining, but the rest of the time, our separateness is absolute. Such schizophrenia could bring even those with the strongest equilibrium to the edge of reason. And let's admit it, I didn't have much equilibrium to begin with. There is the insanity of not being able to be seen together, an insanity that is aggravated in this case by the unprecedented situation of finding ourselves in the middle of a crowd and having to act like strangers. It seems crazy not to be able to show our happiness, such an impoverished word. Others have this right and they exercise it freely. Sharing their happiness makes them even more happy. It makes them expand with joy. But we're left stunted, compromised by the burden of having to always lie and censor ourselves." Stefan tells Thomas that staying in this town is a death sentence. And sure, it's more of a metaphor at this point, but, all the same, really. Thomas, who has up until this point accepted his life and what it's going to be, has a very anxious look on his face. And for the first time, he allows Stefan to comfort him.
It's also that he's just a kid, well, I would say a young man who has just fallen in love, and though he's never dared to believe that this could be his life, his experience of something different and so special, and the fact that it will end soon and that he will be alone and closeted again, well, that scares him in the moment, and he doesn't hide that fear or vulnerability.
On the last day of school, before summer holidays, the boys meet for the final time, both promising to meet again in a month. But Thomas, likely knowing that this is going to be the last time, takes Stefan on the back of his motorbike to the quarry, and he lets Stefan take a photo of him. A photo that Thomas would keep for over 20 years, and the only time he allowed Stefan to take a photo of him. Of course, Stefan races to their rendezvous point a month later after the summer, but Thomas never shows. What I love about the scene of him racing to the pool as a teen is that it's interspersed with him in the present day running back there after he learns that Thomas took his life. And we see him sitting side by side with his younger self. I found present day movie adult Stefan a rather unlikable character who lacked the warmth that I thought that he would have, because he was kind of a sensitive teen. It's ironic because his writing is just so beautiful and gentle and, romantic. And he himself, when he talks about some of his unsuccessful relationships, he says that an ex once told him that he was a wonderful writer about love who was incapable of falling in love. This is where we find out what became of Thomas, and it's a heartbreaking story, both for Thomas and his now adult son, Luca. Luca resents Stefan almost immediately upon meeting him. Well, I suppose he's always resented him. I mean, he and his mother essentially lost Thomas to this man. When there's a confrontation, a verbal altercation, Luca demands answers to the mystery that is his father. We find out that Thomas threw himself into his work on the farm all his life, and he was unhappy and lonely, and Luca didn't get to know his father. Luca says that seeing Stefan on TV is what made Thomas smile. And so Luca would watch his father smiling as he watched Stefan. And this was the only person who could make Thomas smile. At one point, Thomas even left the family, and Luca thought that he was going to go and search for Stefan. He would eventually return home without an explanation though, and he would later take his life. At this point, Stefan is really coming apart as the past catches up with him. He left without looking back, remember. He traveled the world, enjoyed professional success, but he wasn't quite so lucky in relationships. Still, he was openly gay and he got to be who he was. Being back here at this place brings long since buried emotions and memories to the surface. The tragedy of Thomas's life, and in a way Luca's, overwhelms him and he lashes out. He's deeply unpleasant to be around and very unprofessional. That is until the two men go for a walk back to the lake quarry that Thomas and Stefan used to go to as teens. Luca tells Stefan that his father brought him there to the secret hideout, and it does mean a lot that he shared such a special place with his son, especially since he shared so little else. Stefan does tell Luca more about his father then and tells him that he really loved Thomas, and afterwards Stefan goes to visit Thomas's grave. In the book, there is another missed chance because Thomas is actually still alive at this point, and Stefan goes back home with his phone number and considers calling him. He even dials the number a few times, but he stops himself. He's in a relationship, and making that step to get reconnected with Thomas would be a betrayal to his relationship. In the book, he says, "A gesture towards Thomas would be a gesture of mistrust towards the man I live with, a decision to put distance between us, to admit to a love that is not enough. I also dread the cruelty of reality. We were 18, now we are 40. We are no longer who we once were. Time has passed, life has rolled over us and transformed us. We will not recognize each other. It doesn't matter how well appearances have been preserved, it's who we are at the root." I guess Philippe Besson could have made these characters reunite and live happily ever after, a second chance romance. I was so desperate for Thomas to have some kind of happiness again, and Stefan admits that there is something lacking in his current relationship, but I do think it does, speak to who he is as a person, that, he doesn't want to betray his partner, who he does love. He's also pretty realistic about too much time having passed, but I also think that there's a romance in him wanting to just preserve that first love and leaving it undisturbed in a way. In any case, Thomas was never going to fully overcome his shame. Thomas did leave clues, though, that he wanted his son to know who he was. A letter dated 1984, he knew that it would be found. In the letter written on the last day Thomas and Stefan saw each other, Thomas writes that those moments with Stefan were the happiest, and he already knows that he won't be that happy again. He says that it was love, even though he wasn't able to say it, but he suspected that Stefan knew that. In the end, Stefan gives a speech in which he tells some of Thomas's story and that he might have been unable to overcome his shame in life, but not in death, and it was important to him that his son could finally know who he was. By the way, as if we didn't know how lonely Thomas's life was, in the movie we find out that the only people at his funeral were his wife and son. No friends, no colleagues, no neighbors, nothing. He'd been estranged from his son for years at that point as well. He did end up meeting a man, but that relationship ended because the man wanted their relationship to be out in the open, and it was something that Tomas was never going to do. So that was that. I do think that I got some closure finally when I recently revisited this book and watched the movie. I took great comfort in that scene in the end where Stefan made the speech about Tomas, and it seemed like Luca did as well. It was during this scene that I could actually really see Stefan, the writer, in the movie. It was such a heartfelt tribute, and it was nice to see the man behind the beautiful words actually saying them, because he was quite a prickly character. Anyway, we have reached the end of this video. If you have seen the movie or read the book, I'm so curious. Feel free to share your thoughts, and thank you for watching.